Hello, everyone. Good morning, and welcome to today's webinar on financial reporting with Sage Office Connector for Sage 300 CRE. Our subject matter expert today is James Coyle. Just a couple of housekeeping items before we get started. Everyone is muted, so if you have questions, please type them into the box on screen, and we will address them at the end of the session. The webinar will be recorded, and I will email out a copy to everyone later today. I will now turn it over to you, James.
Thank you, Krista, very much for that introduction, and thanks to Accordant and for everyone who's joined the presentation or signed up and will be watching a recorded one of this. Appreciate your time, and we value it, so I'm just going to jump right in. Krista, I just want to confirm that you hear my voice okay. Since you probably started the recording, I want to make sure that that's being captured.
Yes, I can hear you, and I see your screen.
Fantastic. Well, thanks again, everyone. This is a presentation of Sage Office Connector, which is Sage's Excel-based reporting technology for Sage 300 construction and real estate. And we're going to focus primarily on financial reporting and more specifically financial statements in this presentation. However, I will give a basic overview of the query capability that financials is an extension of. We're not going to talk that much about pricing. That would come from Accordant, and if you're interested in a follow-up. But I think that you'll find that based on the investment you make and the return you'll get from what I'm about to demonstrate, that this will be one of the best investments you've ever made. So with that said, this technology, although every customer gets Office Connector installed when Sage is installed, though that just comes with a few what are called starter templates that really can't be modified, and it would include financials. Over 3,000 Sage customers have invested in the Sage Office Connector product suite, and that's the query and write capabilities are concurrent use licenses. So that's over 10,000 concurrencies out there that could be used by considerable number greater than 10,000 at any time. So it's a significantly utilized technology. Our understanding, our belief, what we've heard is that the reason is because Excel-based technology is easy and intuitive to set up, learn, and use. It's not that you shouldn't invest time to learn something. People invest a considerable amount of time to learn, report designers like Crystal, and investing a fraction of that in this technology, you're gonna be able to master a technology like this. But you'll see from this presentation, so I'll be creating something right in front of you, how easy it is to derive the financial information you want to present, and do so within Excel. So you have published quality financials that can be refreshed with a click of a button. But also the ability to analyze that information and explore into detail, including the ability to get and show subledger information from a financial, and all that's at your fingertips, something that you can learn and control as opposed to something that must be created for you. So that's not to say that we don't have consulting that can accommodate you. So Accordant has a considerable consulting capabilities to help you with this technology, and that might include designing financials for you or with you. But regardless of whether you design yourself or we help you, it's about saving you time. So we're just going to keep going and drive into this material here. The Office Connector product suite is comprised of three product groups, product families. The query is the portion that would, from inside of Excel, pull information. So what this technology is not is a means to push data into Excel. Pushing data means that the result is static. That's what you get if you send something from like an inquiry into Excel. It's there, it's just data, then you can manipulate it. But if you ever wanted it updated, you'd have to do that whole process again. Or sending a financial statement that you would print to a file, from financials and then open it and manipulate it in Excel. That's pushing data and it's static. That's not what we're talking about here. You can have a formatted workbook. My example here is a project cost forecasting workbook that you can be formatted and the data can be precisely populated where you want it to be populated. So that from that point forward, it's just a click of a button to refresh into that format. That's the query capability. That's the part that pulls the data in to Excel into whatever format you wish it to be in. The write and import capabilities allow you to take information and put it back. So an example would be general ledger budgets. If you do your budgeting in Excel, why would you then manually enter the entries, budget entries into general ledger when you could just have them sent there and they're accurate, honoring Sage's security and business rules. So write and import allow information to go from Excel back into Sage. This is controlled by Sage's security, so not just anybody can do that. And you can secure who would have the ability to actually design these sorts of things or send the data back in. So really, Excel becomes an extension, a very intimate extension of the Sage's product portfolio when used with Office Connector product suite. So query, as I said, pulls information in. If it's in a table, transactions or accumulated information, you can pull it into Excel and place it where you want to summarize it. But when we do a financial, it's not just about pulling the information, the raw information. A financial is a derivative process. You derive information. You derive information for one or more prefixes, for one or a range of base accounts, or for a current period, maybe compared to a year ago or 3 years ago or 5 years ago, if you have that much accumulated information. That's a derivative process. And if you've ever attempted to do that by pushing data into Excel, it's time consuming if you did it without technology like this. Now, an alternative to that, how would you get a financial for 3 years ago? How would you get access to that information if you didn't have it? Hopefully you have a backup. You have to restore it, and hopefully the files are compatible with your current version of Sage. And why would you do that if you could simply just grab the data and present it? And that's what we're talking about. Office Connector Financials allows you to do those types of things and more. So we'll be demonstrating that. I'll show you queries so that you understand what that is, so you better appreciate what the financial function does. So these are the same products that we just described here, but grouped by how they're licensed. So the query technology is licensed either by concurrent use, either Designer, which you can design, or refresh a report, or standard licenses that just allow you to refresh. Now, there is a third way to use Excel data, the way you probably historically always used Excel data, where it's just static, and you could just then share that once you get it into the format you want. So there's a capability to save a presentation of information as values, and that's just now your Excel information sitting there. And so then you could share your financial with a CPA or whomever else, or whatever other report it is that you're thinking about. So those are concurrent uses. And if you want to know more about concurrencies, we can explain that to you. But financials is a site license extension of query. So if you just have a standard license of query, then the financials I'll be demonstrating that are on the launch pad, you'd be able to run those. You'd be able to utilize those or have something created for you, even with just a standard license of query and financials. But if you want to design your own, then you would get the designer and have financials. So financials extends the query capability, and then here you see how write and import are licensed. I'm not going to go into that because this is a presentation specifically on financial reporting. So why was Office Connector Financials developed? Well, the financial statement designer that you have provides core financial reporting. So if you want to run for the current period or even up to 24 months in advance or in the past, you could do that with the financials. Now, if you have a calendar year end, December, and you're now entering entries for February, so you've entered for January and February, could you run a financial for January with your general ledger being in December? And the answer is no. The legacy financials does not allow you to do that. There's a process we would explain to you that we've explained over the years for quite a long time. That process is not necessary when using Office Connector Financials. You can run off of the 6 future periods and more than 24 months in advance. So the core financials has its capabilities, but Office Connector was designed to go further beyond that and also leverage the things that people tend to want to do in Excel, like graphs and charts and ways to make a report publish quality if you have a board of directors or folks who want to share financial information. So being in Excel allows you that range of flexibility, and you're leveraging technology, so obviously for financials is a Excel-based formula. It's Sage specific, but it would behave just like any other Excel formula. So you can do the things that you're used to doing in Excel, including combining data that may not be in your financials, in your general ledger, because you just want to put it in there, or use conditional logic, things like that. But people asked me over the years when I was a consultant, we couldn't really satisfy that without some external type of technology, but we can now, and we can do it affordably. So specifically, financial functions inside of financials is what is the derivative process, and you're going to see an example of some of those functions in work for you. So you'd acquire Office Connector Financials. The site license has that extension of query, as I already said, and here's how it compares to the legacy financials that comes with Sage. So legacy financials allow you to run for the current period and up to 25 periods total, 24 periods in the past 2 years. You can consolidate statements, you can do partner level statements, but Office Connector Financials was designed to do significantly more, and you see that listed over here on the right. So you might ask yourself, what would something like that, what's the value of something like that? Really, when other ERP systems, when I see their financial reporting, because the core technology, that Excel-based technology, there is technology out there for other ERPs. You wouldn't be able to create yourself on the fly, the way I'm about to demonstrate, a financial with other technologies. And you're doing it based on data that's in Sage. You don't have to pull it into a separate database and normalize it. That's how technology like FRX, if you're familiar with that, worked. And that's not around anymore anyway, not accessible for you, but this is more secure, what I'm about to show you. So let's first look at some results. We're going to look at some results. But before I do that, I want to talk about where your data is located, just so that we're all on the same page. So here I'm in my Sage desktop, and if I launch General Ledger, which I've already done, I would then be in General Ledger here. And if I go into Setup and I go into Accounts, this is where, when you identify like prefixes and bases, which each customer on the line here could have a completely different prefix and base account structure. It's possible, but the account record will still always be the same. It'll have a screen here with the name and the type of an account. Then there'll be the current balance and future balance and year-end balances, which are very important for calculating financials for prior years. So if you want to do comparative financials or run one for a prior year, you would need these values, because profit and loss accounts close at the end of the year. They go to zero. And without these year-end values, you wouldn't be able to derive what the values would have been in prior years. So you've got that. You've got activity. So I'm going to explain to you so you better understand this activity, that this is your current activity based on this account's current period in its general ledger. Now, different prefixes could have different periods, could be in different periods. And in fact, they could even have a different year end. It's possible. And regardless, though, this cell right here, its name is actually current activity. And this one here that you see second in the middle down, that's prior one activity. And prior 2, 3, 4, that's the real name. Its name is not 5/31/2015. That's just there so that you can see for this account what your current period and what your future periods are. So chances are, many of you, your current period is 12/31/2019, and this is January, February, March, etc. So how did these dates populate right there? When you set up a prefix in Sage, you set up your prefixes here. I just have one in this particular data set, but you can have up to 3 in Sage. And when you do that, you could either choose to have your fiscal controls determined here within your prefixes, or it could be everything in your company is all just one year end. So if that's your situation, then just think December year end, that's fine. But for some folks, they have multiple entities. And so it's possible in Sage that you could have an entity that has a 12/31 fiscal year end, and you could have other entities that have 11/30 or 3/31 or whatever it is. They can have different year ends depending on your business needs. Historically, you cannot combine that data in a consolidated financial in Sage. If you had two entities, even if they had the same year end and you wanted to combine them, they would have to be in the same current period in order for the legacy financials to combine them. Office Connector financials, it doesn't care. You can have different prefixes, can have different year ends, and prefixes can have different current periods, and it would still be able to run a consolidated financial. The math involved in that is extraordinary. So what this function does, that I'm going to show you, is extraordinary, and people underestimate what it would take to derive a financial if they haven't done it manually. But if you have, then you'll have an appreciation. So this is where your data is. But as I come back to this slide right here, or the screen, and I look at the activity, notice it only goes 24 months. So if you've used Sage for more than 2 years and you've been on version 9.3 or higher, there's another table that has your history accumulated for up to 10 years in another table. So it just depends on how long you've been using the software since you went to version 9.3. There's a table, but you can't access that table with the legacy financials. It doesn't run off that table. But what I'm about to show you does, and it's quite affordable compared to its functionality. So let's first just have a basic look at Excel and just do a kind of a query. So how does the query technology work? Just so you know. So I'm going to show you a reconciliation between like job cost and GL, because one of the things I hear sometimes in financial presentations is that when people have a financial, they ask, can I get to the subledger content? So I'm just going to demonstrate to you that I can, because I'm going to use query to do that. So on the add-ins tab, this is where Office Connector is. So let's say for a given range of dates, 1/1/2015, I'll go through 12/31, 2015. I want to reconcile like job cost to GL, because maybe that's going to be part of a backup, or I mean, it's an interesting financial related report anyway, so it has relevance in this. So the first thing I'm going to do is I want to get a list of all the debit accounts that have been used in job costs transaction table. So how would you do that right now? If I said, look, I want to assemble a report that has the debit accounts, and then I want to know the amount that was posted to them in job cost over this period of time, and I want to know the debits and credits in GL, and I want to know if they're in proof. So how would you assemble that right now? Well, I'm going to do it in front of you in a couple minutes. So I'm going to pick my folder. That's the first thing. Office Connector is intimately connected to Sage. You don't have to create a data source. You just pick your Sage folder and you log in. I've already logged in because I've refreshed a different report. And I'll then get a list of the tables that I can see with the ODBC driver in Sage. Here they are. And I'm going to say that I want to first look at the job cost transaction table, and I'm going to say I want to grab the debit account. And so I'm going to add a condition that the debit account right here, the debit account is not equal to blank. So the debit account out in job cost, the data is not in Excel. I'm pulling it in. So it's not pushing data, it's pulling, and it's doing it based on the condition. The debit account is not equal to blank. So right there, I've got that situation. And then I'm going to tell it to exclude duplicate rows. So I get one row per debit account. And this is a query so that it's dynamically connected to Sage. So anytime it's refreshed, this account list will grow. So if I wanted to put here the name of my account in GL, I already showed you that table. The GL account table is right here. And so if I say $C6, and I'm going to say account and title is what I want. And maybe I could grab my current balance. Just if I wanted it, I could do that. And so I've looked up those values. So that's a function, and there's the value. So if you've not seen Office Connector before, that's how it works. I can create an Excel function, and I can reference values here. And so now if I copy this down, that's the values for these accounts in general ledger. So now I've already pulled from 2 separate tables. So now I want my job cost amount right here. And then over here, I'm going to want my GL amount. Okay. So now I'm going to go back to this the job cost table. And it was designed like this on purpose because we noticed that the people who run construction companies or property management or builders or whoever they are, you're not a programmer, but you know your business. So we wanted to make it intuitive so that you could build whatever you want if you knew something about Excel. So here I'm going to create another formula, and that's going to be a sum function. I'm going to say I want to sum things up. It's just like an Excel sum function. If the data was on another sheet, there's a sum if function I could use to pull data from one sheet to another. That's the same way this works, except the job cost transaction table is out here in Sage. And so I'm just going to say sum up the amount. That's what I want. And in what situation do I want to sum up the amount? Well, I want the accounting date to be greater than or equal to that date in A2. So I'm going to put in $A, $2. That's in Excel, that's a fixed cell reference. And I'll say the accounting date's less than or equal to whatever date happens to be $A, $3. And you're going to get a copy of the recording, so don't worry, you could just do this yourself. And then I'm going to add another condition. The account out here is equal to that. Well, the account is right there. There's your debit account. The debit account equals the value that's in C6. So now if I change my sort order of my accounts to sort by name or something, or inverse of name, the account that would be in 6 might change, but this formula would still be accurate. So it'll use whatever account it sees, and it will pull the value. So there you go. There's the value in job cost. And the financial function I'm going to show you will work the same as this. It just has a few more parameters, but it's not more difficult than this. So I hit sum, and in this case, I want general ledger transaction table. So I'm trying to answer proactively the question some of you will have, many people have had, is can I grab subledger data from my financial? Well, you do it how I'm doing it right here. So I'm going to add a condition that and you could query the detail. I queried transactional detail. I could have had all the transactions, but that's not the kind of report I wanted. So just to reinforce that. Okay, so it doesn't matter the order of your parameters here. So the account number equals $C6, right? And now I'm going to add a condition that the accounting date is greater than or equal to $A2. So it's exactly the same condition. It's a different table, but it's exactly the same condition that I just provided earlier. So $A, $3, and I can visually look at those and make sure that I've done that. Look right there, I didn't do a $A2. And I truly did make that mistake. It's early for me. So right there. Now there's my condition. I hit finish. There's the debit and credit. I copy it down. Oops. And then, you know, it's Excel. So if you want to create a formula that sums up data, you know, just tell it to sum up the data however you want it. So that's the net to GL right there. Right? So that's debit, credit, net. And then I could do the delta between job cost and GL. So that's it. Like if I want to say that this equals this minus this, I could say if it's not 0, change the background color. So this and this, oops, what did I do here? Yeah. You guys probably all saw me make that mistake. But good, I did it on purpose. No, I didn't do it on purpose. If you make a math mistake in Excel, then it's a math mistake. It's the same as if you manually did things in Excel. That wouldn't make the technology incorrect. You would have made the mistake, and hopefully you'd spot it. But anyway, here if it's non-zero, then you're saying that you want to calculate why. Right? You want to investigate maybe why it's non-zero. So all right, let's see here. Sum H6, let's see here. Did I copy that thing down? There you go. Now I got it right. Okay, I didn't purposely make those mistakes, but I'm glad I did because it showcases visually looking at your data. I mean, these are all good habits. You would do that if you did a financial anyway. So what I did is I built something once, I checked it, and now I can use it on an ongoing basis. And if I said, look, I only want to look at a quarter, like 1, I could do that, right? The data would change. So this is how all the functions inside of Office Connector work, including the financial function. So what does query see? Why wouldn't just query be enough to do your financials? It can do some financial reporting. That was a reconciliation. But if I do a query right now of my general ledger account table, then I can see what it can see. And I see the name and the title and the type. And then as I remember I was there, I showed current balance and future, and I showed there's ending balances. These are the kinds of things I would need to do a financial for a future period or up to 2 years in the past. I would need these values. But it's not enough to just pull the values in, right? These are the values for all my accounts. But it's not enough to pull them in. If I wanted to do a financial for last month, I would have to take current balance minus current activity. That would be the balance last month. If I wanted the financial for next month, it would be current balance plus future one activity. And if you go past the year end, you have to deal with P&L accounts. There's things that have to be done. So a financial is a derivative process, and it can be kind of complicated, but it doesn't have to be. There are examples of the financials already that come with Office Connector financials right here on the Launchpad. So this is the Office Connector Launchpad. You get it when you install Office Connector. It would be here. You would see it up here on your Sage desktop. When you see Excel-based reporting, you'd see it here. And you could add your financials right here. So I'm in General Ledger. If I go to Report Manager and I hit New, an Office Connector template can be a report, just like any of these other types of reports. So you can put your financials, whatever ones you want, on your menus in Sage. You don't have to access them here. But let's look at a couple of these here. So this is a financial statement with drill down. So I'm going to pick my folder and I'm going to run it. So it already has a recipe. The information page would talk about what this was designed to do. It was designed to derive a trial balance, a balance sheet, and a P&L for whatever prefixes that you identify. All of your prefixes, or just like in financials, in the legacy financials, you can have prefix groups and then list out all the prefixes. And you can have more than that many. It even talks about that. There are people who have a lot of it. The first customer that this technology was created for was about a $700 million property management company that had 130 entities. So they didn't use this functionality you're about to see. They did it old school, and they still were happy. So to get a value, I'm just going to use this for sample data. I'm going to pick data. I have a database not like yours, right? So it's older data, but you put your parameters in and you hit refresh, and now you're going to get a result. So I'll get a trial balance, a balance sheet, and a P&L. And this is already applied to a recipe. So you can learn how this works and build your own, or you can take financial training and build your own from scratch, or you could use these out of the box. There's several of them. So you get a trial balance, a balance sheet, and a profit and loss for whatever period you ran it for. So if I ran this for 2020 period 1 or 2, I would still get a trial balance for my future periods if I haven't closed my year. It derives those values. But what if you saw a value like this and you go, well, that doesn't seem right? You know, what would you do? You'd run another report for the transactions, but this one has drill down capability. So Office Connector inherently has drill down capability. It's a special function, and it can pass parameters to another query and refresh it. So it's like a crystal subreport, if you're familiar with that. So if I click this, it passes parameters and I see the detail that makes up the value. So that right there out of the box is a financial that you can get. And there are other financials right here. Entity comparison, where you have entities in different columns, a multi-folder financial. This can be multi-folder reporting. These are pivot table driven ones. Now those are slower because they pull all the detail into Excel and then derive, but they're good to share with other people. If you want to show a composite report and then allow someone the ability to drill into it after you save as values, then a pivot generated report would be pretty ideal. But it's not a real time refreshing like I've been demonstrating. That would require a connection to Sage because who's to say what detail you would have just put in there. And then this is a profit and loss by month. So we'll talk about those, but first I want to show you how the financial works. So I have what I call a financial skeleton where when this technology was first created, people already had reports laid out the way they wanted. They simply had to go through this tedious process to get the report to be what they wanted, right? All these steps. And so they wished, couldn't we just have a formula that connects this back to Sage so we didn't have to go through all those steps? That's exactly what I've been showing you. And I'm going to do it again right here. So what I want is the activity and balance for this account here, this account here, and those are just typed in, they're text. And then this folder has a more sophisticated prefix structure. It has 2 prefix levels, and they're also in different prefixes have different year ends. So I can consolidate them and run a consolidated financial, even though they have different year ends and are in different periods because of how this function works. So what's the magic behind here? If you, on the add-ins tab where Office Connector lives, if you click this function selector, right here, this TSGL amount is the magic. Now these other ones are helper functions, but this function, passing parameters to this function in Excel will derive the value you need and return it into that cell. So you can send it a prefix or blank for every prefix, or a mask like I have, or a list of prefixes like you saw in the financial statement I ran, or a range of cells. It can do that. It can do a base account or a range of base accounts. You can give it a year and period. The period could be a fiscal period or it could be a calendar month. 101 is January. Now, if you have one fiscal entity and December is your year end, then fiscal 1 is calendar 1 for you. But if you have entities that don't have a calendar December 31 year end, then your fiscal periods are different than calendar periods. So you can run this for either one, and it'll accept even a date and derive the period from that. These are the kinds of amounts you can return. So take a moment and have a look at that. You can get the balance, the period activity, year-to-date activity through that period, debit period activity. Just read this. You see it all right there. And you have to, in order to get debit activity, you have to store debit activity, but you can pass the budget type. So then you could tell it to return a budget, the budget for a period instead of the amount, or the year-to-date budget through that period for whatever budget type and whatever period you're in, assuming you have budgets in there. You can pass it to partner if you have partners. You can pass it the data folder. All of those can be parameters. So this is it. This is how easy it is to use the financial function. So the function's right here saying, well, what prefixes do you want to run for? So I'm going to click this and say every prefix that starts with that mask, and then the base account, I'm going to say the base account is in $B9. So to pre-answer your question, can you do a range of base accounts? It said that you could in the function, and there is a function that will pass a range of base accounts to this function, to this parameter. So you can do that. I'm not in my first example, but you can do that. You pass it to fiscal year. Now, right now I have it up here, one fiscal year and period for what I'm doing here, but you're going to see, you should be able to see, since this is an Excel function, that column by column, cell by cell, you can have anything you want, right? Pretty much. So, and you'll see me go into that in more detail. I'm not going to assume. So now to get the activity, the function said you give it, you say period activity. That tells it that you want period activity. If you misspell it, you're not going to get a value, just like any other Excel function. If you put an incorrect value in there, it won't be what you expect. But that's what I want. So now I copy it down and I have a value. So now let's say I change that to period 4. What should happen? If I change it to 4, it derives what it was as April. If I had data from 3 years ago, I could put in, 2012, 2011, whatever it is, and it would derive the value just like I did, and pretty darn quickly. So now I want the balance here. So I'm going to just copy the formula, and that says period activity. Even though it's underneath the word balance, doesn't make it balance. I have to tell it I want a balance. So if you remember, you put the word balance there, and then I copy it down, and now I have a financial. But let's look at this more, explore it more. So just to kind of show you, it's Excel. There's a lot of amazing things you can do. So here I listed out those types. Remember the types that you could have? I listed them here. So why did I do that? Because I know how to use a drop-down box. Under data, you can use data validation and point at that list, and then you can just pick whatever amount you want for any column. So right now that's year-to-date activity. If I want period activity, I come up here, and now I have period activity. So now I have done presentations, and then right at the end had someone say, can I get the value year-to-date through a period? So like that's what it was right there. So the answer is yes, because you're seeing it. And you can get all those other values as well. So that's where I can pick whatever I want in each column. But what if you wanted like one period next to another for whatever prefixes you wanted, whatever you dreamed up? Well, there you go. So I've gone ahead and done that. It's Excel, so you should probably, if you know Excel, you probably could tell I could do this anyway. There's my account. Here's the prefixes. I can change that. I can make that 400, 100, or list out prefixes or whatever, have whatever periods I want. So here I did 3 months, and then I've added them together to do a quarter. And we're going to add an amount type instead of period activity and year activity. We're going to add an additional one for quarter to date. But as you see, you don't need it because you can just derive what you want this quickly. So that's what this technology was designed, is to derive values, place them where you want, and make creating a financial for whatever prefixes and base accounts easy to accomplish. And as you see, if you know Excel, you're able to do it. It works exactly like I just demonstrated. So to come back to the presentation, I'm going to show you a couple other slides or like examples of those financials where you can see all of them. But I just want to finish these slides for time purpose here. So I've given you a presentation. We talked about the roll forward and roll back. So let's just hit that again. So I want to get the balance, year-to-date activity, budget, or whatever it is for a given period in up to 6 months in the future, assuming you have values, or for a period in the past. And if you have accumulated values, there's a table that has them in there for over 2 years ago. So you have to calculate the current balance minus activity or plus activity. And if you go past the year end, you have to use those year-end closing entries values that are there. And the financial function does it all for you, but that's what you'd have to do if you did it manually. So you can accomplish that rolling forward or back. And all you have to do is pass to any function what you want. So here's the prefix and then the base account and the year and the period. You just pass it and the function returns. It does all the work for you and it returns what you want. If you've tried to do this manually, you probably should be saying, wow, because boy, does that save a lot of time. If you're not thinking that, then you're probably not understanding what this technology is doing, because there isn't anything else like this. Here's an amount, a TSGL amount where I'm passing a parameter. So I want to do a consolidation. So I could do a mask, like all my prefixes that start with a certain character, and you could do a pretty complex mask. Or you could do a range of cells, whatever prefixes you have in those cells, or you could do a range of prefixes, so a list of cells or range of cells or whatever. And then I got the base account and so on and so forth. So you could just have a value derived that way. So here are some other examples of what you could do from a consolidation, just to showcase what you could potentially pass the function. So just think of this as an Excel function, because it is an Excel function. It just is a really powerful one that's Sage-centric. Here, the concept of the types of amounts that the different types I can pass. So you're giving the function whatever it is you want. You're just telling it. You're telling the function, this is what I want, return this value right here, and that's what it will do. And you saw me demonstrate that. So these are more of the parameters all listed together right here. So you can see that you could optionally do any of these types of things right here. And that's how we're able to create these finished, substantially complete ones that are ready to go right out of the box. Or you can use them as a starting point, or you can just build your own, what you want. Now I'll tell you that all the consultant training to learn this product broken into pieces, it's all available on Event One Software's YouTube channel. Event One Software created Office Connector. Sage CRE is Excel-based reporting. So they created Office Connector for Sage 300. They created Liberty Reports for Sage Estimating. They created the Liberty Reports for Sage 100 Contractor. So all of those products are there, and on that website you can see quite a lot. I'm going to show you some substantially complete examples like what you see right here. I'm going to show you another way, but this is an example of the entity comparison. So it's right here in the PowerPoint that we're going to send you. So you see I can have one entity right next to another. But you can determine in your mind, this shouldn't be as a surprise, because in my financial example, I could have put different prefixes in each column. I just didn't, but here they did. And so, and then you can graph results. This is Excel. So if you have the data and it's always refreshing into this format and the format's preserved, that means you can attach a graph, a chart, or a pivot table to the results and they'll refresh. So take advantage of it, right? You probably aren't doing it right now if you're manually creating this because it's so time consuming, but don't let this opportunity pass you by. Visually appealing financials is pretty easy. Excel just has a lot of capability in it. We have the financial statement with drill down, so I can see values, and then I can click a value and drill into the detail. This is a multi-folder financial, so it can be, as you see, there's a tab that you can identify different data folders that you want to consolidate. So now it's drawing the data from more than one folder. There are certain things that have to be the same from one folder to the other, like your base accounts. You can't have completely different base account structures and consolidate, because how would you do that? But if you have different folders, or if you've archived information and you want to draw data from more than one folder, you could do so with this technology. There's a out-of-the-box example of doing it that's available to you. This is an example of a pivot table driven report, account history one. So it will draw detail for a range of periods that you tell it, and then you can present the rows and columns the way you want. If you're familiar with a pivot table, this just sets you up so you can more quickly derive a report. And this is actually how a lot of competitive financial reporting, this is pretty much their solution, is they pull the data in and they give you a more advanced pivot table way of working with the data, things like Power Pivot and whatever. You can do the same thing. It's just that with Office Connector, you can reach directly and then derive what you want more quickly. So pivot tables, pulling all the data in, can be kind of time consuming. So you don't have to do that with this technology. And then here it's an example of drilling into that detail. This is the example of that P&L by month. So if you have a cutoff period, you could say run it as of May. And so it'll give you May and back as real information if you have real values, but you could tell it to put budgets in your future periods, unless you had future values and you wanted to use those. You control the formula and the reasoning. So you can pull budgets, you can pull actuals, and you can present them how you want them to be presented. So I see that this one is probably the most common one I see, where people want different things in different periods and they want the greatest degree of control. That's why I chose it as my example, where I could show you I can put any period in any column, my base accounts. So these are those examples. The Office Connector toolbar, I showed you, there's a button that shows you all the financial functions, the YouTube channel, all the financial trainings there. There are training classes available. You just contact Accordant for these. It's how you get into the query beginner or learning financials. There's how to do aggregate functions. There's quite a lot in that. So there you go for links on that. And then this is the contact information for Accordant. And I just, if you'll indulge me, I wanted to show one other thing, and then I'll be done, Krista. So if you come out to the Event One Software website, so event1software.com, these folks who created this technology, if you go to products and you go to Office Connector, you'll see the reports that are included for CRE, and there's financials, there's write and import. So if I go into financials, I'll see those same financials that were on the Launchpad and the screenshots that you saw, I'll see them listed here. So if I wanted to see this entity comparison, I'd click here, and then I'll see screenshots of what that looked like. And I could also have a saved as value example. So here are screenshots. And then if you click this, you'll get a Excel workbook that is saved as values from the sample data. And that just showcases you could do the same thing. As I told you right at the beginning, you could produce a financial and then you could save it as values and you could provide that to someone. They would just need Excel to look at that. Same as this one right here. So with that said, I think I'm finished here. Krista, if there's any questions, we could entertain those or we could wrap up.
Okay, if you do have a question, please type it into the box now, right now. So far, we have no questions.
I'm a comprehensive presenter of information. Yes. So that's the benefit of having done so many presentations is I've been asked a lot of questions, so I can, include most of what I think people need to see or are interested in.
How much is Connector? Okay,
so to get pricing, there you go. Perfect question. For the software pricing, there's Cheryl's email address, and Accordant will give you a proposal. She can give you the proposal looking at what you folks already own based on what you have, what the concurrent use pricing is for any of those components like query, which is required for financials, and also the site license extension to add financials available right there. I'm a consultant. I don't do pricing, so.
Okay, I don't think we have any other questions, but.
Yeah, you got the first question the person answered, so asked, so Cheryl could follow up with them and provide them pricing.
Yes,
absolutely. If anyone else wants pricing, then chat in the questions, and then the Accordant would know that that's what you're interested in.
Yeah, we'll have Cheryl reach out. All right, thank you, James, and thank you everyone for attending, and we'll send out the recording later today. Have a good day, everyone.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right, bye-bye.